What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Johners. This is episode 65, and today we're going to be talking our usual NXT and NXT UK recaps. We've also got a special guest on the line with us today who's going to be talking about his experience from last weekend. It was a bit of a mental weekend for wrestling fans with Rev-Pro, their Summer Sizzler show on Friday. You had Royal Quest on Saturday night, along with AEW's All Out, NXT UK TakeOver Cardiff, and so much wrestling content, especially if you live in the UK, shows you can see in person, whereas usually all the special content is over in America, having to catch up at funny hours of the morning. But we were lucky enough to have some really good shows from some excellent promotions over here in the UK. So we're going to be catching up with our guest host very soon about all of that. But before we do, just to throw out our usual plugs, as we like to every single week, you can contact us on Twitter. Reach out to us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @withjohners_pod. Of course, we're on Instagram, so go and follow us there. Instagram.com/wrestlingwithjohners, and go out and search our ever popular, ever interactive Facebook community page. Just search for Wrestling with Johners. And of course, if you enjoy listening to this podcast, please don't forget to hit like, hit subscribe, share, and shout about the Wrestling with Johners podcast. It's the only podcast for all of your weekly NXT and NXT UK weekly recaps. We also do the WWE pay-per-views, AEW pay-per-views, and of course, we'll probably be touching on the AEW weekly show when that launches on the 2nd of October. So please spread the word, tell your friends and tell your family, and help to grow this podcast. So without further ado, I've got the honour of introducing our guest host. Now, the last time we spoke to this guest host was episode 50, which was our special Ask Johners Q&A special. So I want to welcome Dan Grantham back to the podcast. Dan, thanks for joining us today. I know that you've got a busy schedule. You've been able to squeeze us in, but great to have you back on board, buddy.
Yeah, afternoon, Johners. How are you getting on, pal? You doing all right?
Really good, really good. Just recovered from the busy weekend that we all experienced, and just speaking to you off air, it sounds like you had as busy a weekend as anybody, to be honest with you. And I mentioned about a lot of the top promotions being over here in the UK. You were lucky enough to go to Rev-Pro's Summer Sizzler show on Friday and Royal Quest from New Japan on the Saturday, and you've caught up with AEW and NXT UK. But yeah, if you don't mind, let's have a bit of a catch up with yourself and some of your experiences from last weekend. Rev-Pro, the Summer Sizzler. So I know a few people that went to that show. Had a pretty stacked card with kind of the best of the UK independent talent and a lot of New Japan talent as well coming over. They've got a good association with Rev-Pro, of course. But what were some of the matches or some of the standout moments from Summer Sizzler that caught your eye? It's a pretty stacked card. It has got fairly mixed reviews online, though, as far as some of the matches not quite ending in the sort of fashion that you would expect from a Rev-Pro New Japan combination. But like I say, what was your experience and what were some of the standout moments?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing, John, is the atmosphere was banging. It was absolutely packed. I think there was probably just over 1,000 people kind of squeezed into York Hall. So yeah. If you've not been to York Hall before, like how close you are and the way it's kind of a real bowl of an atmosphere, the old balconies, a real kind of ECW bingo hall feel to it. The atmosphere was off the charts. In terms of the action, the standout for me was the ELP Mike Loku match. I was lucky enough to kind of squeak in front row for that. Nearly ended up wearing a couple of the guys on a couple of occasions.
You posted a clip online, didn't you, of a kind of a flip over the top rope from one of the wrestlers that nearly landed in your lap.
Yeah, Mike Loku nearly had a good go at trying to jump over the barrier at me. We had to look a bit sharp and retreat. So that was a real treat. And I think the mixed reviews were probably around the main event. I mean, personally, I really enjoyed it. It was an epic. They did kind of pull out all the stops. And as you can imagine, in a kind of career versus control of Rev-Pro match, we had all the fun and games, all the interferences. We had ref bumps left, right, and centre, and I think we at least got through 3 referees. For me, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great finish. I know a few of the guys online have reacted differently, but for me, really enjoyable. And the other standout match for me was the 6-way scramble. No one was announced before it, so it was a complete surprise to see who came through the curtains. But we had Sanada, we had Hikuleo, and Mr. Mike Bailey, who I'm looking forward to seeing in Sheffield this weekend. Robbie Eagles, Rocky Romero, and Sense of Alto. And as you can imagine, those 6 contrasting styles in the Rev-Pro ring, bouncing all around every edge of York Hall, was a complete riot.
Yeah, I've heard that match was a particular standout of the night. And one match that I'm particularly jealous that I wasn't able to witness in person was Suzuki Gun, Zack Sabre Jr. and Minoru Suzuki versus Hiroshi Tanahashi and Okada. So tell us about your experience of witnessing, 4 standout world beaters in the ring all at the same time. I've not had the pleasure of witnessing any of these 4, unfortunately. Really want to see Zack Sabre in the ring in the flesh, and especially Okada. Was it your first experience of these individuals, Okada especially?
So yeah, I'd not seen the Japanese guys. I'd not seen Suzuki before, and I'd not seen Okada. I'd seen Zack Sabre Jr. And kind of like Progress and Rev-Pro before. But the big setup, kind of the pre-show almost to Rev-Pro, was the Suzuki and Okada kind of contract signing in the ring. So we had the usual fun and games with the gesticulating and the tables and the chairs out, and every one of the Rev-Pro roster trying to pull the guys off each other as a kind of precursor to the New Japan show coming up the next night. It was a solid tag team match. Pretty spectacular, but having just come off the back of the red-hot ELP Oku match, I think everyone was probably the crowd were probably a little bit tired, and it wasn't quite as hot as those matches, and I think everyone was kind of maybe just taking that time to grab a beer and top up before the Ospreay Star main event.
Yeah. So, you saw Okada for the first time on Friday night, but then you got to see him a second time the following night on Saturday evening, the Copper Box in London. And it was New Japan's Royal Quest. So there were 8 matches altogether. Any standout moments or matches that you remember fondly from Saturday night at Royal Quest, Dan?
Yeah, it was a real kind of show of two halves, Jonas. The kind of first half of the show was it was good fun. It was good matches. They were all pretty similar to some extent, as it all featured various members of Bullet Club tangling with the New Japan guys and a few of the Chaos guys. I think the crowd really came to life with the Eagles Ospreay versus ELP and Ishimori match.
Yeah.
That's the one that really kind of got everyone going, and I think there's 7,500 people. It was a sellout in the Copper Box, kind of squeezed in there. And again, seeing the Olympics when the boxing was on there, it holds the atmosphere brilliantly. I think for me, I really enjoyed the Gorillas of Destiny versus the Aussie Open tag match. There's some really fun spots in there, and obviously good to see kind of one of our kind of British independent staples, I guess, in Aussie Open tangling with the best of New Japan. And for something a little bit different, we had Kenta versus Ishii for their kind of never open weight championship. And that was a complete contrast into all the high flying kind of tag high spot matches we'd had earlier in the evening. That was a much more kind of psychological based match, a lot more hard hitting.
And you saw a title change there as well, Dan. So Kenta is the new never open weight champion. Yeah. So something quite special to happen on foreign soil, you could say.
Yeah, because they've kind of lost track of Kenta since his NXT days and kind of drifting off from the WE. So I think anytime you see a title change in a country which not the kind of indigenous with the promotion, that's always somewhat of a surprise.
Yeah, and there was another title change, wasn't there? Because Tanahashi took the British Heavyweight Championship, which I think is the main Rev-Pro title, away from Zack Sabre Jr. So tell us a bit about that match as well, Dan.
Yeah, and I think that really kind of that was a genuine shock. There was a bit of a hush and kind of aura over the Copper Box when that result came through. And again, the guys put a really solid effort in, really tore it down. We'd been teased it the night before in the tag match, and it's played out beautifully. Like Tanahashi, unusually for kind of being in Britain, he was the big face and the big guy the crowd were behind, and Zack Sabre Jr., despite being on home soil, was portrayed as quite the heelish villain.
And then the main event. So I'm sure these two have wrestled many times before, New Japan, but certainly quite a unique main event for a British crowd. You had Okada versus Minoru Suzuki. So Yeah, two very contrasting styles, with Suzuki kind of having the reputation as being a bit of a hard man, bit of a loose cannon, and then of course you got Okada, Dave Meltzer's favourite wrestler, of course. But tell us of your example, your experience of this. It was for the IWGP Heavyweight Championship, of course, and it capped off, let's say, a very eventful evening in the Copper Box.
Yeah, and this was a real contrast in styles. Obviously, you had Okada, who's kind of got all the flair, all the gear, the kind of Ric Flair robes, and his hair's done to the nines. And then you've got the real stripped down, black boots, black trunks, Suzuki with his kind of ECW Taz persona coming down to a ring, just a towel around his head, and genuine that look in his eyes like he could rip your arms off. So yeah, they're really kind of the whole match kind of played around. Obviously, Suzuki was trying to slow it down. He was going in the punches and the hard hitting, while Okada was dodging and diving and pulling off the big high spots. It was an epic. It went on a long time, but
33 minutes I've got down here. 33 minutes. So yeah, it was an epic.
After all the matches early doors, it was quite an early start in the Copper Box, which I think caught a few people off guard with the show starting so early at 6. And the kind of main event was on by kind of 8:30. So it really kind of flown through at pace, but then this match really kind of brought it down. Again, more psychological to it. The slow pace of Suzuki, Okada with all his flair and moves. And I thought they played it out beautifully. And all along, it was the kind of case you thought, is Suzuki, are we going to have a third title change? Are we going to have a shock? But Okada came through.
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, I'm very jealous. I do want to see Okada in the flesh. I'd love to see him one day. And being as he's, let's say, freely coming over to the UK a bit more frequently, it would appear. Hopefully, I'll get my chance to see him sooner. His entrance apparently is kind of out of this world, and certainly from what I've witnessed on New Japan World, he does have one of the most electrifying entrances in the world. So yeah, can't wait to catch him one day. But
his entrances make like Triple H's WrestleMania entrances look like a really small fry.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. And he is the real deal. So fantastic. 2 shows covered there, Dan. Well done. But then you got back on Saturday night, switched on the TV, and you were watching All Out.
Oh,
so
we kept going, John,
it kept going.
So we went straight from the Copper Box, jumped on the Underground, and whizzed across to Victoria, where the good people at Victoria Bar and Grill were putting on an all-night AEW party. So there's probably maybe 300 people, kind of not quite packed in. Everyone had got a seat. I think they've kind of done the ticketing quite sensibly. But yeah, we had a full house ready for AEW all-nighter.
Yeah, and what was your impression of that show? I know, like I say, don't want to run down every single match because we've got the review show, of course, with Chris Thornton in the archives. But what was your kind of general impression of that show, and where's your head at the moment regarding AEW? I mean, we've spoken about AEW before, but kind of now that they're 2 pay-per-views in, they've had a couple of smaller shows as well. They've obviously got their weekly TV show. Just a month or so down the line on TNT, and they've announced another pay-per-view as well, which I think is going to be called Full Gear for middle of November. But having witnessed All Out, kind of, are you still on the hype train regarding AEW, or where's your head at currently?
Yeah, I'm all over it, John. Get me on that hype train. I'm kind of like ringing the bell, and all stations go.
Good.
I mean, even despite that Rev-Pro show and then spending a few hours in the Copper Box, it was like, we were pumped up for AEW, as was everyone else, and some good surprises on the card. I think the Pac getting the win over Omega was a really good high spot, and then things have just the Jericho, the Bubbly has kicked off this week. He seems to have redefined himself yet again.
He's really reinvented himself. Well, loads of times over the years in nearly a 30-year career, and I think that as I mentioned on the Facebook community page last night, his current persona, Le Champion, and his Bubbly, it's just reinvented himself again. And like I say, perfect timing with him obviously winning the bouts, the AEW World Championship at the end of All Out. But I've never been the biggest fan of Chris Jericho. Something has never really clicked between me and Chris Jericho, the character. but I'm all over it. I love this persona. I love this gimmick. And I think he's not only the best heel, but possibly the best wrestler, or possibly the most over character in the business at the moment. But you're obviously all over it as well. You're loving a bit of the Bubbly and Le Champion.
Jericho, and I think I particularly just like the kind of different variety on the AEW show, from the kind of ridiculous, the high spots of the kind of, it was almost a death match, wasn't it? The kind of Janela Havoc Allen match, and then we had the unbelievable chaos of the Lucha Brothers and the Young Bucks, and even some kind of more, I like the tag team wrestling there. I think we've got a really stacked tag team division. So seeing the guys like the Private Parties, and then we saw Angelico and Jack Green kind of take the heel turn as well. So it's bubbling up nicely. And then I don't know when we're going to sleep, Jonas, because Wednesday nights are out the bag now with NXT and AEW. So
exactly,
God knows if we're going to get any work done.
it is, and it's just trying to get my head around kind of how I'm going to do the reviews, because I think it's not airing until the following day on NXT, or at least I think they're doing hour 1 exclusively on the USA Network, hour 2 on the Wednesday night on the WWE Network, and then the full 2 hours on the network on the Thursdays. So that'll be interesting. But let's talk about another show, the final show of the 4 that took place last weekend, NXT UK TakeOver Cardiff. So I've already done a full review with David Anderson and Matt Bayliss, of course, which is in the archives. Go ahead and listen to that if you want our take on kind of the show from Cardiff. But I'd love your kind of take on it as well, Dan. Dave Meltzer has come out with these ratings. He's given 2 matches 4+ stars, and the Walter Tyler Bate match 5.25 stars. So once again, he's kind of superseded his 5-star rating, going to 5.25 for that main event. But it was a cracking show from my perspective, and we'll be talking about a couple of the matches that are on the pre-show that appeared on this week's NXT UK, of course, very, very soon. What was your thoughts on NXT UK TakeOver Cardiff, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, again, we were struggling by this point, Jonas. By the time I got up, I'd managed to swing back from London and squeeze in a game of cricket, so I was ready to tapping out. But I think the pressure was on. It'd been heaped on for the Wrestling Republic. Had watched 3 shows in kind of 2 days, and could the NXT TakeOver kind of live up to all the hype? And yeah, absolutely. I thought the card was top to bottom. A couple of genuine shocks in kind of Kaylee Ray. I didn't think she was going to pinch the title from Toni Storm. We had the kind of Cesaro, even it being kind of teased in the week, that was still the surprise to see Cesaro come out and tackle Dragon off in a match we never know we needed. And I'm excited to see the potential there for Cesaro kind of let loose in the smaller kind of side of the promotion. And Tyler Bate, again, he's been kind of in the tag team mix in there with Mustache Mountain, but for any of the guys who follows progress over the years and saw the Bate Walter match at Wembley last year, what a performance, and to carry that kind of performance with Walter was a hell of a way for me to end the weekend.
Yeah, it really was an amazing match. I've seen it a few times since returning back from Cardiff, and it's just as good every single time. But and I mentioned in a Facebook post following TakeOver Cardiff that Tyler Bate has to be up there in the conversation of one of the best wrestlers in the world, because the performance he put on Saturday night. And I know that he was alongside Walter, the ring general. So we know how good Walter is, and he's carrying so much gold at the moment with being the Progress Atlas Division World Champion and NXT UK Champion. So we know how good Walter is. But Tyler Bate really, proved his mettle on Saturday night, and the selling, the recovery, the performance, the fire that he showed was outstanding. So, a real great cap off to a fantastic evening, in my opinion. Dan, thanks for all of that. Let's crash straight into NXT UK from this week. So as I mentioned earlier, Piper Niven and Rhea Ripley was one of the pre-show matches. So I think early on, and I think you may remember this from having been at the NXT UK TakeOver tapings at Download, this was initially thought as being possibly on the main TakeOver card itself. This particular match, they kind of had a bit of an ongoing feud now for several months, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they actually had a match out Download which Piper Niven won against Rhea Ripley. But For some reason, they've not had a huge amount of build to this match since then, so they've not really been a prominent players on NXT UK TV for the last few weeks. So that's possibly why it's been knocked down a couple of notches to the pre-show. This was a fairly good match. This was the first match of the night in Cardiff. And you may remember as Rhea Ripley came out, she kind of looked over her shoulder and scowled at somebody that obviously annoyed her. That was unfortunately me. I was shouting at Rhea Ripley. I don't know if it was good or bad, to be honest with you, but she didn't take too kindly to it. So Rhea Ripley got a tremendous ovation from the fans in Cardiff here. However, I'm not sure how it came across on TV, whether it came across as loud. There were definitely louder chants for Rhea Ripley compared to Piper Niven. Obviously, due to her look, her attitude and her star presence, it's no wonder that she's now being featured on NXT in a bit of a mini feud there with Shayna Baszler. You did hear dueling chants for both competitors from the fans here to begin the match. Piper misses a senton, which Ripley capitalizes on with several shoulder barges in the corner. Rhea then goes to work on Piper's back with a Steiner recliner before applying an inverted cloverleaf, with Piper somehow managing to reverse the hold into a knee bar submission. Rhea then goes for a second Steiner recliner. This time Piper manages to power her way out to a standing position, dropping her opponent down with full force. Piper connects with a cannibal senton, then a Vader bomb in the corner for a strong 2 count. Piper then is able to punch her way out of an attempted riptide, followed up with a running crossbody, and she gets a 2 count of her own. Piper Niven then applies... She appears to hoist Rhea Ripley up for her Michinoku driver, but Rhea goes over the top. She floats over the top of Piper, clubbing her injured back from behind one final time before nailing her riptide pump handle slam for the pinfall victory. So this was a fine match with Piper Niven not quite showing us everything she's capable of. However, Rhea Ripley in this match definitely demonstrated that she is a future star on the rise, especially on the black and gold brand. It might appear possibly going up against Shayna Baszler in the coming weeks. And I think we'll talk more about that match fairly soon. But it wasn't to be for Piper Niven on this occasion. Dan, I'd love to know your thoughts on this match from Cardiff. Yeah, and we all know that Rhea Ripley's star is definitely on the rise. She's definitely a star who's going to shine very bright in the future, whether it be NXTUK, NXT, or possibly on the main roster. But what about Piper Niven? She hasn't had the best of starts since joining the UK brand. But what say you about this match and about the two individuals involved?
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic this with. Obviously, Piper Niven getting the early victory in the first kind of match at Download, which seemed to have a lot more build-up and a lot more hype. And I think we did discuss from a long way out, this was kind of like, this will be ring-fenced as a big takeover Cardiff ladies match on the card. But I think Ripley bouncing back, and obviously we're setting the scene now for her to kind of take on Baszler as the next kind of credible contender there. And Piper's been a bit stop-starter for her. Yeah, she's kind of had a win, had a loss, jumped into a bit of tag action with the Candy Flosses and the Ginnies and the Jazzy Gabbets. Interesting to see how the character develops from there, if she kind of is going to be the next titled contender for Kaylee Ray. Obviously, we know they've got a rich background in ICW and put on some absolute hell of a matches before, so they can definitely work together. And if Ripley kind of drifts into NXT full-time, we will see. But I thought she might have been part of the NXT triple threat, which is coming up, I think it might be the week after next, with Belair and Mia Yim and Io Shirai. So we'll see which side of the fence she lands on.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens when she does face Shayna Baszler, which I think is taking place on next week's NXT. But I've got it down in my notes here. I'm sure we'll get to it very shortly. But after this match, we then see Radzi in a backstage interview with the assistant to the GM, Sid Scala. And it is explained that Jack Gallagher will not be fit to compete in his scheduled match against Cassius Ohno in the main event of tonight's show. Just then, Ohno turns up and tells Sid that Sid is dropping the ball and that he is going to go to the ring now, and he'd better find him an opponent because he would hate for Sid to forfeit the main event of tonight's show. Then we see Johnny Saint, the GM of NXT UK, of course, walks up to Sid and whispers something in his ear, with Johnny telling Radzi that Cassius Ohno will have an opponent tonight. So before that match, we then get a video package highlighting Tegan Nox, who will be making her NXT UK debut on next week's NXT UK. So Tegan Nox, I don't know if you followed her on the UK independent scene. Her UK indie name slips my mind, but she was a stand-up performer on last year's WWE Mae Young Classic, of course, and it was during that tournament where she went out injured, and she's been out for well over a year now. But obviously making her comeback, she has been doing the rounds on the Florida circuit for NXT. But it looks like she could be a staple on NXT UK. But what are your thoughts on Tegan Nox and her being part of the very strong women's roster on the UK brand?
Excellent. Yeah, it's another interesting addition. And I think both the women's divisions on the both sides of the NXT Atlantic are starting to get very crowded now and very packed. So it'll be interesting to see if there's any movements up and any movements across to the Raws and SmackDowns from a few of the guys at the higher end. And again, another one, Tegan Nox, is she going to be in the picture for in there with the Ginnies and the Jazzy Gabbetts and the Piper Nivens for a title shot?
Well, I've got my suspicions, and only because of kind of how things played out on Saturday night, that Toni Storm may well have wrestled her last match for NXT UK and could be going up to NXT, especially with them going live on the USA Network. I think that Toni Storm could be a new attraction there for the NXT audience, and I think she's ready made for the American audience, to be honest with you. If not, possibly a move up to the main roster, but I do think that, and it's just my opinion, that Toni Storm could be departing NXT UK to make way for possibly a Tegan Nox. But very interesting development there, and I can't wait to see what Tegan Nox can deliver on the UK brand. And then we go to our main event of this week's NXT UK, Cassius Ohno versus, Cassius Ohno makes his entrance, and at this stage not knowing who his opponent might be. Just then, Sid Scala's music started up, so Sid marches down to the ring, ripping away at his tie, his jacket, and his shirt sleeves. And it looks as though Sid will be taking up the mantle of the much bigger wrestling genius Cassius Ohno. So, from my vantage point in the arena, Dan, when Sid's music started, the fans didn't really understand why Sid's music was playing. We thought he was going to come out to make an announcement. And then he started marching down to the ring, and we thought, well, this is Sid's moment. He's going to be in the match. We obviously weren't aware of the backstage angle or the interview that took place between himself, Radzi, Johnny Saint. However, we soon figured out what was going on as Sid marched his way down to the ring, and that he was being inserted into this match to face Cassius Ohno. And almost immediately, the fans started to get behind Sid. So Sid managed to break out of a wrist lock from Ohno to start off with a few tumble rolls around the ring. Sid then manages to avoid Ohno's advances with a swing through the ropes, going underneath Ohno's legs, eventually getting a roll up on Ohno for a close near fall. Ohno then gets in an attack on Sid's left ankle before ripping Sid's shirt clean off his body, sending buttons flying everywhere. Ohno then steps on Sid's ankle, but Sid rolls through for another 2 counts. Then as the two fight out on the ring apron, Sid drops Ohno with a neck breaker across the turnbuckle. Sid then launches himself clean over the top turnbuckle, landing awkwardly onto Ohno, with Ohno possibly getting the better of that move. Certainly being the first to roll back into the ring anyway. Ohno then nails Sid with an outside dragon screw on Sid's left ankle before the knockout artist ends the match with his rolling elbow for the 1-2-3. So in the arena, Dan, the fans were firmly and audibly behind Sid Scala. The noise and support that Sid got and gained during this match was definitely noticeable. And watching it back on TV, it doesn't come across as loud, but the atmosphere for Sid and the kind of the real, you felt there was a real underdog story being told here. But it wasn't to be on the evening. If this is the underdog babyface gimmick that Sid could be portraying going forward, I'm definitely all in for this one. But give us your thoughts on this match. We haven't seen Sid in the ring on the TV for a long time. He's been the mouthpiece or the assistant to the general manager, of course, for quite a while now. But quite an interesting match and an interesting dynamic and a story that they were telling between Ohno and Sid Scala.
Yeah, sounds interesting, John, and sounds like you had the classic kind of watching a TV taping arena experience and then seeing a match come on with very little context set behind it. But it did have it didn't quite come through on the TV, I guess, the kind of noise what you experienced in the arena there. But I guess quite a few of us were kind of like probably hoping and praying, oh, come on, we're going to have Cesaro. Cesaro going to come out and we're going to have the Kings of Wrestling implode in the ring. But yeah, interesting how that storyline goes with Sid, and I think we've got some good stacked heels in NXT UK now, with Ono being right up there, and obviously he wasn't considered on the Takeover card. So it'll be interesting to see where his career goes now and if he kind of progresses to that next level. And where does Ono fit in the kind of pantheon of Gallus and Imperium and British Strong Style? Or does he are we going to reunite with Cesaro? We're going to have the Kings of Wrestling tackling the grizzled young veterans at some point, or the South Wales subculture?
Yeah, that would be interesting, wouldn't it? I mean, it sounds from all the reports that Cesaro pleaded with Triple H to get him on a UK takeover show, and considering the reception and the reaction that Cesaro got at the Motorpoint Arena on Saturday night, it wouldn't surprise me if we see Cesaro again. And like you say, it would be great to see if there is some sort of confrontation or possibly re-teaming up partnership with Cassius Ohno, the former Kings of Wrestling, of course. But yeah, very interesting. And I'm really enjoying what they do with Cassius Ohno on the UK brand as well, to be honest with you. They're definitely using him for all of his experience and his wrestling knowledge and his heel persona. And I think he's delivering on all fronts. But that pretty much wraps up the NXT UK portion of the show. I know that they taped the next few weeks worth of NXT UK TV in Cardiff on the Sunday evening after Takeover, with the South Wales subculture in action, defending their titles. As mentioned earlier, we'll also have the NXT UK debut of Tegan Knox, and it looks as though we'll be seeing the introduction of what they're calling the British Rounds as well, which is essentially a rounds-based system, very similar to what you may have seen on the old kind of British wrestling circuit, the World of Sports matches. And for those of you that are watching WCW in kind of around 93, 94, identical to the Marquis of Queensberry rules matches that we saw featuring a certain Lord Stephen Regal, otherwise known as William Regal, and Ric Flair, and they were highly entertaining matches, so I'm sure you can go out and see those on the WWE Network or possibly YouTube. But it sounds like they're doing the British Rounds gimmick. It sounds new, but it's kind of a rehash of what us British wrestling fans were familiar with 30, 40 years ago. Dan, I'm sure you weren't around 30 or 40 years ago, but what's your thoughts on this new gimmick match?
Yeah, this sounds a little bit fun, a little bit of a throwback and a little bit old style, very retro.
Yeah.
Something, funnily enough, what I like to give my local promotion, Breed in Sheffield, a shout out. And they've done something similar with a kind of submission wrestling concept where they kind of remove the ropes from a ring, and it's submission only. So, yeah, we'll see where this leads. Another twist and another kind of different arm to the NXT UK brand.
Definitely, yeah. And I suppose it's something to maybe a unique gimmick match to the UK brand. So it'd be interesting to see where that goes. But I think they've already taped one set of matches for the British round. So we'll see where that goes in the coming weeks. Crashing straight into our NXT review then, Dan. So now last week's NXT was one of the best, most eventful and action-packed episodes of NXT I can remember seeing for a long, long time, possibly ever. It really was stacked. The main event of this week's NXT, however, will feature Adam Cole defending his NXT championship against the winner of the Breakout tournament, Jordan Miles, plus so much more. So let's get started. Let's crack on with the action. So our first match of the night was Breezango, combination of Fandango and Tyler Breeze, of course, going up against Matt Martel and Chase Parker. Now, I'm enjoying the reimagined Breezango here on NXT, to be honest with you, Dan. However, I can't help but think they should officially change their name to the Fashion Police. I think that will be a much better name for this tag team. It just has a better ring to it as far as I'm concerned. Here in this match, Martel and Parker have apparently been tagging together for over 15 years, and they even got their own entrance prior to this match. Parker and Martel got in a small amount of offense until Tyler Breeze made the hot tag to Fandango. Fandango drops a Falcon Arrow before pinning their unfortunate opponents with their fashion faux pas, which was where Fandango slingshots himself into the ring with a clothesline to their opponent, laying prone across Tyler Breeze's knees. So he hooks the legs, gets to 1, 2, 3. So yeah, a quick match to open us up with on this week's NXT. What's your thoughts on what went down in this opener then, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, first off, John, let's talk about the music. The Breezango new theme was an absolute belter. A little bit of anti-fun police sirens in there, and it was catchy. I was tapping along and nearly grooving on the sofa.
Yeah, I did enjoy that. Yeah.
And their opponents, yeah, they had some good tunes as well. I thought it was a really solid match. I think Breezango have found a real leash of life, right? They found their real kind of verve in NXT. And they've already been put over strongly. We've seemed to put the Forgotten Sons to bed and kind of won that little mini rivalry to get them started. And I would not be surprised to see them come through as the kind of next challengers to the Undisputed Era's tag belts. Yeah, great look, great music, great win.
Yeah, totally agree. Then we get... we're about to cut to another match, or what appears to be we're about to cut to another match, and then we get some footage backstage of Io Shirai destroying Candice LeRae with several vicious-looking kendo stick shots somewhere backstage, further in their feud, of course. And then we get a video of Cameron Grimes appearing to be massively displeased, disappointed that he didn't win the breakout tournament, despite impressing the hell out of everyone, myself included. He said that all he wanted was to go straight to the top and to contend for a championship, the NXT championship. But now he says he's back at the bottom and his goal is to get back to the top and to be the champion, to be the champion, to be the champion, he repeated over and over. So this was a nice little video to get across more of Cameron Grimes' character. And this is something that NXT have always been very good at and they do very well. I'm really digging his look as well. I quite like his look with the leather waistcoat and the top hat. I think it's quite a good style for him especially. So we know that he can wrestle. He can definitely cut a great promo, and now he has a standout look. Cameron Grimes is definitely going to the top, as far as I'm concerned, going to be a top star very, very soon, in my opinion. What's your thoughts on Cameron Grimes, Dan?
Yeah, interesting look, isn't he? A bit of a kind of one of the smoking guns mixed with a little bit of Bray Wyatt and a bit of the Blackjack Mulligan in there. We've not seen the old leather waistcoat for a while. And yeah, I thought it was a little interesting promo. As you say, NXT do a great job of these little... it's like the old kind of early 90s superstars of wrestling, the little vignettes they used to call them, the kind of little 2-minute intros and kind of glimpses into the characters of the wrestlers. So I'm sure all the guys from a breakout tournament are set for big things, and I think I'm probably holding out and hoping to see where Dexter Lumis comes next.
Yeah, very interesting. He was another standout performer. Although he got eliminated in the first round, I think it was against the big guy Bronson Reed. But that was an excellent match, and I think Dexter Lumis certainly made a name for himself. Certainly from his entrance, his demeanour, his very kind of menacing presence. Yeah, certainly not one that you'd want to tangle with in a dark alley late at night, that's for sure. But then we go straight into our next match, the Velveteen Dream versus Kona Reeves. We get the North Americans entrance first, followed by a re-energized Kona Reeves, who got a great reception from the fans at Full Sail in this non-title match. This match went back and forth for the first few minutes, with Reeves getting in some offense against Dream, appearing to have the champ reeling with a slightly more intense and aggressive style from the finest one here. However, it's not too long before Dream hits back with a top rope double axe handle, a couple of super kicks and a Dream Valley driver. And that's all it took for the Velveteen Dream to get the win here. But just as Dream was celebrating his victory, we see Roddy Strong on the video wall asking Dream if he is ready for a one-on-one experience with him. Roddy tells Dream that he loves the bright lights, but does he have his attention now, as the camera pulls back to show the Velveteen Dream's beloved couch on fire, courtesy of Roderick Strong. So Dan, it was announced a couple of days ago that Roderick Strong will go to battle with the Velveteen Dream in the very first live 2-hour show on the USA Network in a couple of weeks' time, giving Roderick Strong the opportunity to fulfill the Undisputed Prophecy and have the Undisputed Era having all the gold. But give us your thoughts on this match and kind of the little angle that took place afterwards.
Yeah, I think it's a solid match to kind of build up the anticipation for the first NXT live show on the old USA Network there. And we know Roddy and Velveteen are going to tear that down, and we've got the whole added extra dynamic now of the Undisputed Era kind of going for all the gold and going for the full house. Only the Velveteen Dreams kind of standing strong there and clinging onto that North American title. Solid match, but Kona Reeves is kind of he's a bit of a kind of bumped up jobber almost for NXT. He always seems to get the roll over to whether it be Ono or Kushida and now Velveteen Dream. But clearly the crowd are behind him and the audience like him. And you forget what a big guy he is. He's a massive guy, and he kind of almost kind of stacked up bigger than the Velveteen Dream.
Yeah, he's good 6'3", 6'4", I think. So he's a big guy, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, so excited to see the Roddy Strong, and like, there's nothing more you can do to wind up a man than set fire to his couch. That's the ultimate slap. So the team is going to be furious.
Absolutely, but yeah, looking forward to that one. So that one's going to take place on the first 2-hour live show on the USA Network, of course, and that should be a pretty good show. So, like I say, just a couple of weeks after, they're going to be going head to head with AEW's new Wednesday Night Dynamite. So, yeah, Wednesdays are going to be pretty packed for wrestling fans. It's then announced after last week's confrontation between Shayna Baszler and Rhea Ripley that they will be going up against one another on next week's NXT, as a matter of fact. And for many fans, this could be considered a bit of a dream match, certainly a fresh matchup for both Shayna and Rhea, giving us a bit of NXTUK, NXT crossover. Personally, I think that Rhea Ripley could be more of a mainstay on the black and gold brand going forward. But this should, give us a bit of a glimpse into where Rhea Ripley's future lies ahead, whether it's going to be on the NXT brand or not. But that's another match I'm looking forward to. Dan, what about yourself?
Yeah, I think that's going to be an absolute corker. I think we're all pretty fresh and ready for Baszler. Seems to be just kind of ripping through the women's division on there, and we've been through Yin, we've been through Belair, we've been through Shirai. So let's see if the best of the UK can offer some stiffer opposition.
Yeah, definitely. Interesting though, because Rhea Ripley is traditionally a heel, so it will be a kind of a heel versus heel match. Although she was received as a bit of a babyface in front of the Full Sail crowd when she made her surprise entrance last week. So maybe that's it for her. Maybe in NXT she's going to be more of a babyface. I think she's the one that is possibly going to be cheered during that match, but we shall have to see. But moving on to our next match, Dan, it was Bianca Belair versus Tainara Conte. So the first thing that I thought when I was watching this match was how we haven't seen Bianca Belair in what seems like months. That was my first kind of thoughts. But also how Belair's shine has definitely faded since her matches against Shayna Baszler for the NXT Championship from earlier on in the year. So maybe those defeats kind of hurt her confidence or her character, but for some reason we haven't seen her around for a little bit. And it's kind of, she's faded to the back of our memories before this match anyway. So don't get me wrong, I still think she's got an amazing future in the WWE as a whole. But her push has almost disappeared before this episode, with the focus being more on the Baszlers and the Candice LeRae's, Mia Yims and Io Shirai's of the world. In this match, however, we saw Tainara. She did get in some offense. I really enjoyed the armbar on the ropes that she performed on Belair. However, Belair struck back with a fall-away slam on the outside. Belair then shows some fire with a handspring moonsault to stiff running forearm. Then Belair hits a KOD Falcon Arrow for the 1, 2, 3. So Dan, what were your thoughts in this match? And did her comeback towards the end remind us of the old, more dominant Bianca Belair?
Yeah, again, she's kind of been a little bit put to the side. She had her 2 takeover epics versus Baszler, and then we've refreshed things and brought in a little bit of new talent there. But good to kind of build up Tainara Conte as well. It's the kind of classic what NXT gets right so often is even in a defeat and a loss, it kind of still builds the character of the wrestler on the losing side. And we'll see if we get Belair back bigger and stronger. Can she get past Human Shirai and have a third crack at Baszler on a takeover?
Yeah, good point. We're then told that Johnny Gargano will be back on next week's NXT, where he'll be addressing his future on the black and gold brand. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. What would you like to see happen to Johnny Gargano? Has he got anything more to prove on the NXT brand? Should he be moved upwards to the main roster, dare I say, where he did have a brief spell earlier on this year alongside Tommaso Ciampa before Ciampa's injury, and then we kind of didn't see Gargano on the main roster after that. But Johnny Gargano, for you, I don't think he's got anything more to prove on NXT, or does he? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, it's I think he probably would be fit and ripe to move up to the main roster, would be your natural selection there. But with NXT now going live on TV, I think we'll be holding him back. How far away Ciampa is from a return, we don't really know. We're led to believe he's not far away, Ciampa, from making a big return. So you've got to have half an eye on War Games and the likely teams to go into there. So are we going to see a DIY-led coalition taking on the Undisputed Era? You would probably think so. So Yeah, I don't know if he'll be back in the title picture. I think we've probably had enough of Gargano, Cole there. We've had a best of three as it was,
Yeah.
which has been nicely put to bed. So maybe Gargano chases a different title, whether he comes out with Ciampa for the tag belts, or he's in Ciampa's corner, or he goes after the North American title. Let's see.
Very interesting. We'll find out more in next week's episode to see what Johnny Gargano has to say about his future. Personally, I wouldn't mind seeing him in a different environment. I know people are going to shoot me down for this, but I think he could be a figurehead for a 205 Live and really make that brand more popular than it is now. I think they do need some bigger names on that brand to really elevate 205 Live as a serious proposition going forward. I have heard that they're looking to possibly amalgamate the 205 talent with the SmackDown Live talent when that changes to Fox on Friday nights from October. So potentially, if that were to happen, Johnny Gargano could be in a bigger spotlight on the SmackDown / 205 Live brand. But that's all speculation, of course. But I would like to see Johnny Gargano prove himself on a different environment. But of course, my fear is the same as everybody's fear: is will he be utilised? Will he be used properly with his size? Obviously being a factor there in the land of the giants. If he's given an opportunity, we know that Johnny Gargano will shine wherever he goes. But failing that, I'm more than happy to see him forever on the NXT brand. And like I say, he could be another good figurehead and a big name to kickstart the 2-hour live shows on the USA Network in a couple of weeks' time. But then it's announced from William Regal. An announcement from William Regal to tell us that there will be a triple threat match, as Dan alluded to earlier on, to determine the new number one contender for the Women's Championship, pitting Mia Yim, Bianca Belair and Io Shirai. So we spoke about Bianca Belair earlier on after her match with Tonara Conte, but this should be a great match, this triple threat. Personally, I'd love to see Io win it. She's definitely hot at the moment, on a bit of a winning streak, on a bit of a hot streak, and it'd be great to see a heel Io versus Shayna, possibly at the next takeover, which will be War Games. But what's your thoughts on this triple threat, which we will be experiencing next week between Belair, Shirai and Yim, to see who faces or who's going to be the next number one contender to the Women's Championship?
Yeah, I'll just quickly touch on my earlier point you made there, John, is about possibly 205 being a bit of an addition to SmackDown, a bit like the Cruiserweights were to Nitro back in the good old WCW days.
Yeah.
And I'll float out there, we could have a Gargano, Daniel Bryan 205 Live rivalry.
That would be sweet.
That would be sweet. But onto the triple threat next week. I think Shirai is the one coming into this with the momentum. We've had the change in look, the demeanor, the music and the lighting. She's got the whole kind of set up now to be this big heel character. And I think it would be a good kind of movement from having two kind of face losses against Baszler to see if the heel Shirai can take on this added new demeanor and give Baszler the full run. Although Yim and Bianca are certainly not buried by any extent.
No, it's going to be a really interesting match, and to see who they favour at the end of that. But it'd certainly shake things up if Io did win the match and goes on to contend for Shayna Baszler's title. Then we're on to our main event of this week's NXT. And of course, it's the winner of the NXT Breakout Tournament, Jordan Myles. He opted to challenge for the NXT Championship, reigning champion Adam Cole, of course. So the more experience of Adam Cole pays off early in this match, Dan, as Cole avoids a soccer kick on the apron from Myles before pulling Myles down to the ground, then smashing his opponent face first into the ring post. Cole then demonstrates his vicious streak, launching Myles hard into the turnbuckle and then the ring ropes to great effect. Myles gets a 2 count from a bridging German suplex. Myles then gets another 2 count from a Yakuza kick and a backstabber. Sorry, that was Cole that got 2 count from the backstabber there. Myles then gets a 2 count. I'll start again. Myles gets kicked out of the sky with a super kick from the champ before Cole gets another 2 count from an Ushi-Giroshi. He's put many opponents away with that move. Myles then demonstrates his high-flying ability with a stunning dive through the ropes onto Cole on the outside, followed by a frog splash for a very close near fall for the Breakout Tournament winner. However, Miles goes for one move too many, it would appear, crashing and burning off of a 450 splash. Cole wastes no time connecting with two very wicked super kicks. Then his shining wizard hooks the leg and gets the pinfall victory to retain his championship. So I love this match. Definitely the highlight of the show as far as I was concerned, between these two great wrestlers. They really seem to have some fantastic chemistry. I mean, the match only went 10 minutes, but they really clicked in the ring together. Cole proves once again that he is a fighting champion, but Jordan Miles definitely made a name for himself in this match, with plenty to look forward to from the former ACH in the future. So give us your thoughts on this very entertaining main event for the NXT Championship, with Jordan Miles just falling short, with Adam Cole retaining.
Yeah, painted a great picture, didn't it? It was a real good, again, we kind of alluded to this earlier, how what we probably really like about NXT is that even in a loss, a character gains a lot. And this was certainly the case with kind of, even though he's 13 years in and experience, and we know him as ACH from the Indies, Jordan Miles presented as the young upstart here, and he nearly did it. He had some chances. He created some offense.
Yeah.
But Cole ultimately comes through, again, protecting Cole, who's been on this worldwide tour defending the championship, and it keeps the Cole in a strong position. And Miles will certainly be none the worse for a narrow loss.
Yeah, definitely the highlight of this week's NXT. And like you say, it was a bit of a star-making performance for Jordan Miles. I know that he had a fantastic tournament in the breakout tournament, and had the final match. The highlight of that tournament was just ahead of the last takeover in Toronto, when he beat Cameron Grimes, of course, in the final there, and that was an excellent match in itself. But this was definitely a star-making performance, as you said. There's been a couple of matches where the loser in this week's NXT certainly looked better off than they did before. So it's indicative of NXT and being able to make stars, whether they win or lose in these matches. But so this was nowhere near as eventful as the barn burner of last week's episode. However, we did get to see Bianca Belair do her thing in the ring after weeks of being off screen. A rather ordinary outing from the Velveteen Dream, designed to further his feud with Roddy Strong. And like I say, the ultimate payback is setting a bloke's couch on fire. If anybody did that to mine, I would not be a happy man, Dan. And then, of course, capped off with this excellent main event between Adam Cole and Jordan Miles. But a fun couple of shows there, NXT and NXT UK. Any final words about this week's NXT, Dan?
Now I think we've kind of summed things up quite nicely, haven't we? It was a very short blast on the UK scene with just a kind of 35 minutes. I guess we've had to squeeze a lot of content out of the Sunday night in Cardiff the night after TakeOver, but we can look forward to the Grizzled Young Veterans rematch with the South Wales subculture chaps. And NXT we are building, and we are holding a little bit back for the big debut on the USA Network. But we've definitely got the whole Undisputed Era dynamic. The women's division is becoming stacked up again, and bring on more Breezango.
There we go. No, I totally agree. Really enjoyed Breezango earlier on, but there we go. So, Dan, I want to thank you so much for helping us out with this week's episode of the Wrestling with Jonas podcast. Like I say, you helped us to cover Rev-Pro's Summer Sizzler, New Japan's Royal Quest, and a bit of NXT and NXT UK. So thank you, my friend. Hope you've enjoyed helping us out with this week's episode. Just before we say goodbye, where can the listeners reach out to on social media if they want to get in touch with you on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram? Where can they come and say hi?
So let me have a little think, Johners. Instagram's good. Just nice and easy. Cheeky Dan 182. Obviously a big Blink 182 fan in my day. I'm in the Wrestling with Jonas Facebook group, so reach out to me in there, can tag me in there and say hello. That's where you'll find me.
Your Twitter's a bit more complicated, so I think we'll just
not involved in Twitter. That's had to go after some grilling on Tipping Point.
No, that's but there we go. So thank you once again for helping out. We'd love to get you back on a future episode, Dan. But thanks again, buddy.
No problem, John. It's always good to hear from you, pal. And
excellent.
I'll give you a shout when I'm down in Bristol. We'll go get an Attack show or get down for a Dragon Gate show.
Sounds good. So that's all from this week's Wrestling with Johners. Please keep it tuned to the Wrestling with Johners podcast for all of your weekly NXT and NXT UK updates. And if you enjoyed listening to this week's podcast, please don't forget to spread the word. Hit like, hit subscribe, tell your friends and tell your family, and let's get even more people listening to the Wrestling with Johners podcast. We'll be back again in a week's time, so next Friday, where we'll be covering the usual NXT and NXT UK. And next week will be our WWE Clash of Champions pay-per-view previews for our predictions episode going into next weekend's pay-per-view. As if we haven't had enough big shows in the last couple of weeks, we got another one from the WWE coming up in a couple of Sundays time. So I'll have a new guest host joining us for that episode. Another Facebook friend of ours, Jason Lee Wood, will be joining us for his podcast debut and helping us for covering those shows on next week's episode. But that's everything from me and everything from Dan. So thank you once again for listening. Have a great weekend and speak to you all soon.